A book of length, work of fiction, written in verse and retelling the erotic deeds of an extraordinary person or a group of people. Good day, everyone. Today, we were discussing about cultural history, epic poetry.
Oral tradition, syncretism, folk Catholicism, and folk Islam. First, we discuss about heritage. Heritage, the legacy of tangible and intangible attributes for a group of people inherited from past generations. Ang heritage ay ang pamana, ay buong hanay ng ating mga minanang tradisyon, monumento, bagay at kultura. When we say cultural heritage includes tangible culture, such as buildings, monuments, landscape, books, work of arts, and artifacts. When the intangible culture, such as folklore, traditions, language, and knowledge. Second, the oral tradition. Oral tradition, human communication wherein knowledge, art, ideas, and cultural beliefs and practices are received, preserved, and transmitted orally from one generation to another. Ang oral na tradisyon ang una at pinakalaganap na paraan ng komunikasyon ng tao. Ito ay tumutukoy sa isang dinamiko at lubos na magkakaibang daluyan ng oral para sa pag-unlad, pag-iimbak at paghahatid ng kaalaman, sining at mga idea. The oral traditions encompasses an enormous variety of spoken forms, including proverbs, riddles, tales, myths, epic, song and poems, prayers, chants, songs, and dramatic performance. The third is syncretism, a combinations of different elements of different religions, cultures, or practices. Ang syncretismo ay kapag ang isang aspeto ng dalawa o higit pang natatanging kultura ay nagsama-samang upang lumika ng isang bagong kaugalian o filosofiya. Syncretism can occur for many reasons, from immigration to military conquest to the marriages between groups, if results in a culture finding ways to blend new customs into their own. Fourth, the folk Catholicism. The folk Catholicism, ethnic expressions of Catholic practices that sometimes contradict the teachings and practices of the Roman Catholic Church. Folk Catholicism, Catholic ideas continue to inform beliefs throughout Filipino society, such as sanctity of life and respect for hierarchy. For Catholicism in the Philippines, the most relevant celebration of popular Catholicism in the Novena Christmas known as Simbang Gabi. Ito ay sumisumbolo sa pamayanan ng pagsasaka at binubuo ng 9 na araw na devotional na kilos ng mga misa bilang paghahanda sa Pasko. In the 16th century, the Portuguese explorer Ferdinand Magellan 1480 to 1521, first brought Catholicism to the archipelago. Originally named St. Lazarus Islands by Spanish explorer Ruy Lopez de Villalobos. In the fifth, the folk Islam. Folk Islam, the practice of Islam but incorporated with indigenous beliefs and practices that describe forms of Islams that incorporate native folk beliefs and practices. Ang mga katutubong Islam ay sila ay may iba't ibang pamahiin tulad ng pag-iwas sa mga espiritu sa pamamagitan ng mga inkantasyon at mahiwagang anting-anting at pagbigkas ng mga talata sa Quran upang magdulot ng mga mahimalang pagpapagaling. Let's proceed to the cultural history. When we say cultural history studies and interprets the records of human societies by denoting the various distinctive ways of living built up by a group of people under considerations. involves the aggregate of past cultural activity such as ceremony, classroom practices, and their interactions with locales. Cultural history brings to life a past time and place. Cultural historians study beliefs and ideas. Ang kasaysayang pangkultura naman ay isang pagsisikap na tumira sa isipan ng mga tao. Cultural history allows us to take a step back and recognize that some of what we take for granted is remarkable. Philippine epic poetry. Grand oral traditions represented in myths, old sayings, communal songs for farming and harvesting, folklore, superstitions, and so on. Philippine epic poetry, when you say myths, are stories that are based on tradition. Ang myths ay maaaring may tunay na pinagmulan o katang-isip lamang. Ang myths ay mga kwento noong sinaunang panahon at moderno ng kultura. Second, the old sayings. This old Filipino saying as a reminder that every action has a consequence. Para sa akin, ang old saying ay ang bawat kilos ay may kahinatnan. Communal songs for farming and harvesting. It talks about the labor and farming that improves the efficiency of the work, which improves the lives of the workers. Folklore refers to the cultural expressions such as narrations, jokes, beliefs, and so on. Folklore reflects culture because it relates to the way of life of the people who produce it. We are unique as individuals, but we are all connected through these moral truths. Superstitious beliefs. Individual beliefs exist that we are famous amongst the natives. Ay isang paniniwala o paraan ay ang pag-uugali na batay sa takot, sa hindi alam at pananampalataya sa mahika o swerte. Isang paniniwala ng ilang mga pangyayaring o bagay ay magdadala ng mabuti o masamang kapalaran. Epic poetry. Epics used to be recited by special members of the society called binukod for hours and hours during special occasions, transversing with the protagonist of the story and his adventures.
Among the epics, only Biag ni Lamang and Bicol Hanjong were recorded during the Spanish era. Then, in 1914, anthropology professor H. Oatley Bayer began collecting epics. And also he noted that true epic poetry is today found chiefly among the pagan groups and the Moros, but fragments of pre-Spanish epics have been recorded among the Christian Ilocos, Bicols, and Leyte Visayans. Mayroong isang bagay na inaalam o iniintindi sa epiko. Ito ay ang elemento o kung ano ba ang mga bumubuo sa epiko. Kung ito ba ay naiimpluwensyahan ng mga kultura ng ibang bansa o nadadagdagan. Maaari itong makita sa karakter ng ama ni Lamang, Don Juan, o sa mga gawi kagaya ng kasal ni Lamang bilang sakramento o sagrado. Maaaring sanhi ito upang mapapagal ang paghuhulog sa pagsasabing wika o transmisyon ng mga Espanyol. Ang Philippine Folklore Society na naitatag noong 1958 ang nagpatibay ng tumpak, wasto na translasyon at publikasyon ng mga epiko. The Ifugao Hudhod was recorded from the recitations of several singers from different locations, resulting in different versions and translations from the early 90s to 1950s. The epic follows the adventures of several characters from different perspectives like Aliguyon at Hananga, Hudhod of Aliguyon, who was bored by the rustle of the palm tree at Aladugen, and Hudhod of Pugan, but the most known is Hudhod ni Aliguyon. It tells the story of Aliguyon, born in a village called Hananga. He was a notable young man who learned combat skills and chanting magic spells from his father. which is the village leader named Amtalao. Aligoyon went on to the battle of his father's enemy, Pangaywan. Instead, Pangaywan's son, Pumbakhayon, faced Aligoyon. They both fought for 3 years non-stop, and in the process they developed an admiration of each other's skills. They ended up their fight and drew a peace treaty between their villages, which their respective peoples celebrated. They both ended up marrying each other's sisters. Aligoyon ended up marrying Pumbakhayon's sister, which is Bugan, while Pumbakhayon married Aligoyon's sister, Aginaya. The themes of Hudhod are social responsibility, love, harmony with nature, patriotism, self-sufficiency, and spirituality, among others, were evident in the epic that in 2001 it was named a masterpiece of the oral and intangible heritage of humanity by UNESCO. From Sulod in central Panay comes the allegedly longest Philippine epic that, if continuously sung, would take 30 hours. It is Hinilawod. It is composed of two major epics of Labao Donggon and Humadapnon. Jocano recorded the epic of Labao Donggon with 3,822 lines and the longer Humadapnon with 53,000 lines. Hinilawod tells the story of three demigod brothers, which are Labao Donggon, Humadapnon, and Dumalapdap. The long story features heroic feats, sacred rituals, several themes that show what ancient Filipino society valued, an aspect of early Philippine society that we have difficulty accessing due to the advent of colonialism. In Mindanao, the missionary Frank Laubach, his picture was attached. He was the first to introduce Maranao folk literature to the world in the 1930s, especially their darangan or epic song. Unfortunately, it was not picked up and none showed much interest in his work. Laubach noted that these epic songs have great historical importance as they are the only important survivors of the ancient Philippine civilization. A collection of 17 cycles and with Sanskrit elements, darangan is likewise a series of lengthy songs in sequence. Ang pinakasikat na episode or series ay nakatutok kay Bantugan, ang kapatid ni King Madale na ruler or king ng Bumbaran. Si Bantugan ay gwapo and very popular that Madale, his brother, out of jealousy dahil sa selos, decreed that no one talk to him again. So si Bantugan, that was driven by his sadness because his brother was jealous of him, traveled to foreign lands. At one point, he falls ill and dies and is sent back to Bumbaran. So si Madale, his brother, journeys to the heaven, punta siyang heaven to bargain for his brother's souls, and upon return, he is overjoyed na makita niya ang kanyang kapatid na buhay. As they celebrated the miracle, Madale's rival or ang kalaban ni Madale na si King Miskoyaw attacks Bumbaran, and Madale orders his datus to fight the foreign vintas of the seas. So Bantugan joins the fight but is captured. He regains his strength and avenges the deaths of his warriors. Sa kanyang pagbabalik, Bumbaran celebrated once more. Like other Philippine epics, the Rangin explores the themes of love, death, politics, and heroism. Its significance was honored as masterpiece of the oral and heritage of humanity in 2005 by UNESCO, as it reflects Maranao's society and culture before they converted to Islam in the 14th century. The folklore characteristics of these epics reflect a very old part of our history. We can see or imagine what had happened noon and what occurred through these epics. The nuances between the versions also reflect the provenance such that Manuel observed with the Hinalawod versions of the highlands and lowlands reflecting their respective cultures. It emerged that the highland was more detailed and less influenced by foreign elements. Always present in epics is the varying degrees of supernaturalism or heroism of the characters, such like Hudhud characters were closest sa human capacity or kung anong kakayahan ng isang tao, while the epics from Visayas and Mindanao portray their characters as needing some sort of magical power that they would use in battle. Kasi in the Visayas and the Mindanao would morally believe on supernatural's power or hindi ka panipaniwala ng mga bagay that uses like magic, witchcrafts, and so on. The epics provide important insight or importanteng pananaw into Philippine prehistory or nung wala pang kasaysayan or nung unang panahon. However, we must be cautioned or maging alarma tayo. Hindi tayo basta-basta mag-interpret, mag-study ng isang epic or caution that sa pag-interpret while using epics because they are bound by changing epistemologies, institutions, disciplines, and technology. Present-day Philippine indigenous communities endowed with verbal arts are not only able na mag-preserve and shape their narratives but also mag-gather ng kaalaman from the folklore on several issues, some of which ay ecology, gender, ethnicity, and social class. All these epics are chanted generation after generation to reflect deep-seated lifeways and values or as expressions of beliefs and ideals of a time so long ago but permeate into present-day Filipino. The Philippine epic is not just written for enchantment or enjoyment of Filipino, but also para magpakita or that we can foresee the beliefs, expressions, ideals noong unang panahon pa, but na kung paano natin ito ma-reflect in the present day or ngayon, paano natin ito ma-apply or paano natin ito makukompare so that we will do better things, we will do better decisions nowadays. If you would ask why Philippine epic poetry is part of cultural history, it is because it states the past cultures ng mga Pilipino na pwedeng nag-reflect sa mga ginagawa natin ngayon and also the previous culture na we still believe and do. If you would ask me also, is preserving epic poetry important? Of course, yes. Why? Because it is a source or preference natin of what we follow and do nowadays. Here ends our topic. I hope that everyone understands the importance of Philippine epic poetry. Thank you for listening.